way back in the days of dinosaurs and giant robots and the monkey thing from the Kung Fu Panda movie. There was a man, and his name was the William Shakespeare, and he was just walking along thinking to himself one day. He thought, hey, I'm remembering that old myth about those two kids who was in love and then they killed themselves. So I'm like, why not make like a better version of that, Because I'm better than whoever made that was, because I'm William Shakespeare. And so he did do that. The following thing is not in any way an accurate representation of Romeo and Juliet. For your own safety and the safety of others, stop watching this video now. So like way back in the medieval times, when there was people who's like medieval and whatnot, there was this place and it was called like Verona, Italy or whatever. And in Verona, Italy, there was two families that was super like importance or whatever. There was the Capulets, who will be represented by this pen, and the Montagues, who will be represented by this pen. You see, they didn't like each other very much, so they liked, they fought a lot, beating each other up, whatnot, because they hated each other. And one day, when they was beating each other up, the king came in, who was a Triceratops for some reason, and he said, hey, if you guys keep doing this thing where you're totally like fighting and whatnot, I'm gonna kill you. And so they were all like, oh no. That's the end of that scene. So after the big fight and whatnot, this guy who was like totally best friends with the Romeo guy, he was just like, I wonder where Romeo is. He didn't show up to the big fight in which the king said he was gonna kill all of us. I better go find him. And then he did do that. And when he found the Romeo, he said to Romeo, hey Romeo, why weren't you at the big fight where the king said he was gonna kill us? Oh, that's just because I'm in love, Romeo said. And the other guy's like, what's going on? Why are you in love? And he says, well, I'm just in love with this girl who doesn't like me. So he's like, okay, I'll help you forget about this girl. And then he's like, nah, I don't want to forget about a girl. I want to go and find her and, make her like me and whatnot. And then the other guy's like, well, that doesn't sound like a very good idea. Well, let's do that anyway. And meanwhile, the Lord, the Capulets, who was the rivals of the Montagues, who was what Romeo was, he was just like walking along and he was hanging out and he was all like, hey, I should have a big feast and I'll send out this courier to tell everybody about my big feast, and here's like a list of people whom I'm gonna have the courier invite. And so he called for the courier to come so that he could give the courier the list of the people, and the courier came, but the courier couldn't read, so he just like told him what was on the list, and the courier was all like, okay, even though I'm a robot with no arms who can't read, I'll go take this list to all the people, and I can't read. And then back in where the Romeo and the other guy were, he shows up and he has the thing, and he's all like, hey, you guys, can you help me read this thing? I forgot what it said. And Romeo's all like, oh, sure. And then he's like, hey, look, that's the name of the girl that I like. She's at this party. We should go there. And then Romeo's friend was all like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. And then they read the thing to the guy and gave it to him. And he's like, we're totally on that list. That's our names right there. And then he went to the party at the end. But that's not really the end, because then he went to the party and he was all looking for the girl he liked. But then when he didn't see the girl he liked, and instead he saw the Juliet. The action figure who was supposed to play Juliet called in sick. Juliet will be played by her stand-in, Iron Man. So like I said, Romeo was at a party, he was looking for this girl he liked, he couldn't find her anywhere or something or whatever, and then the Juliet came in and he was all like, hey, you're the pretty, you want a kiss? And she was all like, no. And he was like, come on. And she was like, no. And he was like, well, come on. And she was all like, yeah, sure. And then they kissed, all like, mwah, 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 mwah. Next scene. And also at the party was this guy, and he was named Paris, and he's gonna be played by Chewbacca, and he was like wanted to marry the Juliet, so he was talking to the dad of the Juliet, and he was all like, "Hey, can I marry her?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure, just wait a year or two. I don't care, bye." And then after Romeo was just like doing whatever, and then somebody whoever just like walked up, and they were all like, "Hey, that was like the Lord the Capulet's like daughter he was kissing," and he's all like, "Oh no." And then the Juliet was just like doing whatever, and then the guy who is named the Tybalt walks up, and he's all like, "Hey, that was definitely like Romeo from like the Montagues or whatever," and she was all like, "Oh no." And then Juliet and like Romeo both decide that they're too in love to just like walk away, and they gotta go like be in love or whatever. And so they go like do whatever. And then later that night, Romeo decides to be like a total creep and sneak into Juliet's yard. And he's like hiding in a bush, and then Juliet comes out onto a balcony, and she's like talking to herself, and she says all like, "Hey, that Romeo kid that I met at that party, I'm totally like in love with him." And then the Romeo like steps out of the bush, and he's all like, "Yeah, me too." And she's all like, "Oh, hi," that sort of thing. And then like next day, Romeo like he's walking along, and he like comes over to this priest guy, and he's all like, "Yo, priest guy, could you do like one of them wedding ceremonies for me and this like girl I just met?" And then the priest guy's all like, "Well, that's weird, because you was totally liking that other girl the other day, but now you like this girl. But I'll do it anyway, because it'll probably like end the feud of the whole Montagues and Capulets or thing that." And like, "Okay, that's a good deal." And then Romeo finds his friend. His friend's all like, "Yo, this guy Tybalt saw you at the party, and he totally wants to fight you because he saw you at the party. And you should fight him, because he wants to fight you, Romeo." And then the Romeo and the Juliet get married by the priest, and then the priest goes away, for the rest of the story. And then they're married, and then later there's the Romeo's cousin, who is the guy from the party who was also Tybalt, who wanted to fight the guy, who's Romeo shows up, and he's all like, "Hey, I'm Tybalt, I'm the guy who wants to fight you, let's fight." And then Romeo's all like, "No, I'm not gonna fight you, because you're Juliet's cousin, and I like Juliet." But he doesn't say that to Tybalt, because then Tybalt will kill him, And then he can't stop the Tybalt guy from trying to fight him. So the Tybalt tries to stab him, but actually the blade goes under his arm, and it hits the guy who is Romeo's friend, and he starts dying. And then Tybalt's all like, "Oh no, better run away." And then Romeo's all like, "Oh no, my best buddy, my friend, you're dying. What's going on?" And the guy says like, hey yo, I curse your family and also that other family, Ugh. And he's all like, "No." And Romeo's all bummed out because his best friend got murdered. And then Tybalt comes back, and Tybalt's all like, "Hey." And then Romeo kills him to death. He's all rage and murder. And then he just runs away. And then, the king shows up, and he's all like, "What's going on here? I said no more fighting. What's going on?" And then one guy is like, "I saw this guy. He comes, and this guy here, he comes and stabs this guy, and this guy dies. And then this guy comes back, and this kid, Romeo or whatever, comes, and he stabs that guy, and that guy dies. And then the Romeo, runs off that way." And then the king is all like, "Huh, well, that guy's, probably right, so I'm just gonna banish Romeo, because, I'm a king. That's what I do." Yeah. And then Juliet, she's back at her house, and she's all like, "Oh boy, I'm sure I am waiting for the Romeo to show up or whatever." And then her nurse comes in, and her nurse is all like, "Hey, yo, I'm a dinosaur. Also, that Romeo guy just murdered your cousin. Goodbye." And Juliet's all like, "Oh no, Why would he do that? I'm so mad at him. But then, never mind. I like him anyway, and I'm on his side. Okay, goodbye. And in the Romeo, he's all like, hang out in the thing, and somebody comes and tells him he's all banished, and they're all like, hey, you're all banished and whatnot, and he's all like, oh no, I'm banished, bye, and then he runs off, or whatever. And then the Capulets, they are all like, hey, we should totally have the Juliet marry that Paris guy now, because like we should just have him get married in 3 days. And for some reason, Lady Capulet was a zebra, who knows? Let's just move on. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the house, there was the Romeo and the Juliet, and they was all like hanging out in the Juliet's room, and then the Juliet's all like, hey, look, is it done? And he's like, no, it's not done yet, I don't have to leave. And then they argue about whether or not it's done for like ever, and then he leaves because it's done. And then the Juliet's just, like hanging out and having a good time. And her mom comes in and she's all like, hey, by the way, in 3 days you're gonna marry Paris, goodbye. And then she's all like, what? No, I'm not doing this. And she's all like, yes, you are. And she's like, no, I'm not. And she's like, that's I'm your father. And the father comes in and she's all like, hey, I'll disown you. I'll disown you if you don't marry him. And Juliet's all like, super sad because she doesn't want to marry this guy. So she goes to some guy, and she's all like, hey, guy, like, hey, and then she explains, what happened and whatnot. And he's all like, well, I got a way to get you out of this. Just like agree to the wedding, and then, like take, like, this, and it's like a thing that'll make you look dead for like 48 hours, and then they'll put you in the tomb, and I'll go tell like that Romeo guy to like save you. And then Juliet was all like, oh, that sounds pretty great, and she flew away because she's Iron Man. And then Juliet goes to her dad, and she's all like, hey, Dad, I changed my mind, and I totally want to be in that wedding and marry that rich guy who I don't like at all because he's the worst, and I hate him, and I hate him, mostly that, but also I love him or whatever, and I want to marry him, and that's totally what, I'm not like, scamming you or trying to trick you into me, like, running away and marrying Romeo or anything. Except for she doesn't say that, because then he would get really angry. And then he's all like, oh, that's a great idea, why don't I just, like, move the wedding up to tomorrow, since you want to be married to him so much. And she's all like, oh no. And then Juliet's in her room, and she's all like, talking to herself, and she says, it's all like, that'd be super scary to just fall asleep, and then wake up 2 days later in a tomb, so maybe I shouldn't do the thing, but you know what, I'm gonna do it anyway, because Romeo and whatnot. And then she does the thing, and she's all like, and then her dad comes in, and you're like, oh no, and Paris comes in, he's all, oh no, and the mom's like, oh no, and Paris is like, oh no, and the nurse who's a dinosaur is all like, oh no, she's all dead. And then the guy who's the priest and also was the guy who gave her the thing to make her get knocked out is all like, well, we should totally take her to her tomb now, and also she's in a better place, so don't worry. And also, it looks like you're not getting married to her in Paris, and Paris is all like, eh. And then he's all like, taking her to the tomb, whatever, like that. And little does the Juliet know, but the priest guy, when he sent out the courier to take the message to Romeo, the courier got intercepted because the government thought that he had the plague, so they just, stopped him from going. And then the thing never got to Romeo, and then Romeo's just like, so where's Romeo? And then Romeo hears all about it, and he's all like, oh no, I better go, kill myself and lay down next to Juliet's, the dead body, because she's dead, and I loved her and whatnot. And so he goes to this poor guy, and the poor guy makes, medicine and whatnot, and the poor guy is all like, hey, what do you want? And he's all like, give me poison. And he's like, no, that's a crime. And then Romeo's all like, well, but money. And he's like, deal, and then he gives him poison and he just walks away, So like when the Romeo gets to the tomb where the Juliet is to kill himself, he finds that the Paris is already there, and Paris is all like, what you doing here? I'm gonna arrest you. And then Romeo's all like, nah, I'm just gonna kill myself. And then Paris is like, nah, I'm just gonna arrest you. And he's like, nah, I'm just gonna kill myself. And he's like, you know what, let's fight then. And then he sends somebody, he's like, hey, you, over there, just go get the guards or whatever, I'm gonna fight this guy. And then he, like, picks up a sword, and he's all like, stab, fight, fight, and then they fight. During the whole fight thing, the Romeo, like, murders him, and he's all dead. And he's all like, murder. And he's like, yeah, come on, dead. And then Paris is dead. Romeo walks into the tomb, and Juliet's all dead, and then he takes his poison, and he's all like, well, gulp. And then he's all like, is smooch. And then he drinks more, and he's all like, down. And he's dead. And then later, Juliet wakes up, and she's all like, oh no, Romeo's dead. And then the priest comes in, the priest says like, hey, it didn't work, must have been like God or whatever. I'll just, like, get out of here. I'll find you a place as a nun, so you don't have to, be dead. And then the priest walks away, because he thinks that the guards are coming. But Juliet doesn't leave and become a nun like the priest said. Instead, she like, like kisses Romeo right on the face, because she thinks maybe that he's still got the poison on his lips, and that doesn't work. And then she hears the guards coming, because somebody called the guards, and then she's all like, oh no. And she takes the dagger off his belt, and she's all like, stab, and then she's dead. And the guard comes in, and he's all like, oh no, look at all of this, somebody should go get the prince, and the Capulets, and the Montagues, and whatnot, because these kids, they're dead. Somebody, like, deaded them. And so then the Capulets and the Montagues show up, and apparently the Montague guy was a, Crocodile Dundee without a head, and the Capulet guy was, still the Capulet guy. They show up, and they're all like, oh no, our children and whatnot. And the king is there, and the king's all like, hey, yo, guys, seems like you've been punished enough for this whole feud thing, you guys should just, like, stop it now, because, like, your kids are dead, because they was, like, in love or whatever, like, I can't really, like, explain what's going on, but this guy can. And the priest comes in, and he's all like, explaining everything, and then they're all like, oh, that makes sense. And he's all like, well, I guess we're not gonna murder each other brutally. And then the Montague guy comes up, and he's all like, hey, I'm sorry about this. I'm gonna make a statue made of gold out of that, Juliet of yours. And then the Capulet's all like, yeah, I'll make one of those gold statues out of that Romeo guy, because, we're friends now, and we gotta make gold statues to show our friendship. And then, like, they shake hands, and they just walk off. And the king leaves too. And that's the story of Romeo and Juliet, and everybody's dead, the end.